Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Friday Night Live. My name is Kesh. I've got Sean, we've got Mark. We've got a lot to discuss today. We've got producer Ryan, who will be paying attention because he is going to be producing the show. So if you like it, you hate it, you don't like our scripts, well, we really aren't scripted, it is all producer Ryan's fault. Now, speaking of faults, today is the common mistakes, and we've talked about this before, but I think I really want to go back to this, especially because of this article that I'm seeing, Sean, and you're someone who's always talked about this, the market sentiment, right? The market sentiment is something that really influences someone's buying behavior. So when toilet paper started to run out, whether you had toilet paper or not, people ran to get it.
True.
Right? Suddenly, someone was telling me that lettuce was costing more than houses. So suddenly, even people who didn't want lettuce wanted to go and buy lettuce or check it out. So it's weird.
Didn't McDonald's at one point decide to swap out lettuce for something else in the
cabbage?
interim?
I think. Yeah,
something like this. Right? I've heard some rumors.
100%. So we want to talk about that. One common mistake, market sentiment. The second common mistake that we often see people make is the forever analysis paralysis. And I think, Mark, you're someone who I think personally are like, out of all of us, you shoot first, think later. You're very, very action oriented, which I really admire about you. And I think you've been able to help a lot of our investors actually take informed decisions. So I'll come to you about that. And what I would love to talk about is patience. Patience is virtue when it comes to real estate, and people will soon realize that. So today's episode is going to be actually fun. We've talked about this before, but we want to get specific. We want to pick each other's brains, if you will, and hopefully you get some value out of today's discussion. Now, before I start the episode, I want you guys to read this article, okay? And know that they are changing their forecast. These experts, they really are. They really, really are.
If you need my commentary of the article, just press that button for 2 minutes straight. That's my commentary.
No, but it's true. Okay, so last year, when the whole interest rate thing, 40% crash, and I think in one of the episodes we covered this, we said, is this like the new COVID? Right? Lock yourself in, the medical expert, so then the RBA expert. The poor guy's not getting pushed off his job, can't make decisions no more. There's going to be a new body in place taking decisions around interest rates. But the same experts who were showing us that mortgage cliff is going to be here, the banks are really worried about what is going to happen in the economy, have suddenly, today, this is April 27th, at 5 a.m., published that ANZ revises its forecast as house prices rise faster than expected.
I love the fact that you highlighted it was published at 5 a.m. Are you trying to say that Neil is working way too harder than what she should be?
No, they're doing the Outlook.
5 a.m. I mean, 5 a.m., ladies and gentlemen.
Mate, AFR.
Props to Neela Sweeney. I mean, respect.
100%. No, it's AFR, bro. There are no guys who read this stuff are up at 4:15.
That's the key. That's literally what I was trying to lead into. But you got the thunder going. You got your Mr. Thor here, Thunder God.
That's it. We've got to get the clap.
What about our real FNL intro that we just go?
Yeah, I don't know. The silly machine has lost that, right? And this is not just here. So then there's another article about Westpac saying the same thing about Sydney climbing up and so on and so forth. And I was looking at one of a suburb very, very popular with some of our clients. They've got houses there. And I can see this mum and dad suburb called the Ponds is just rocked a sale of $2.3 million. Well done, purchaser, on purchasing this property. And I can start to see, like, there's momentum in the market, dude. People are spending millions despite interest rates, and it all comes down to supply. And we talked about this multiple times. We've told people, you get into this for a long term, and I'll come back to that. But Sean, coming to you straight, right? The first common mistake. Get us started.
Fantastic. Great question. So I know we're all going to be emphasizing on different mistakes as we go ahead, but I wanted to really emphasize on sentiment for a particular reason, because sentiment is something that will always be there regardless of the time you're in. So if I can look back over the last 2 or 3 property cycles, you'll notice that we find in the Australian property market a certain trend occurring. And what is that trend? The trend is actually something where there's about 90% negative sentiment, 10% positive sentiment. So out of the 10% that's a positive sentiment, what are you finding? You're finding once in a lifetime stories. You're finding situations where people bought houses, renovated them, and then flipped them for 10x the profit or whatever it was, which is not in reality a scalable sort of model, right? So you hear good news on a fairly, I don't know if this is too loud, but you hear good news on a much smaller scale compared to property sentiment than you do bad news. So what's the first thing to come into a news article when something goes south in the property market? Builder goes bankrupt, developer goes bankrupt, quality is bad, real estate's going to be going next. So if there's ideas of, or stipulation of a third world war or nuclear tensions or trade tensions, the first thing that people think is that should reflect on the property market having a downturn. So sentiment is this creative beast where regardless of where you are in your property journey, there will be a running theme of macro sentiment. There will be a running theme of micro sentiment. Now, getting a little bit technically advanced here, micro sentiment is there's certain suburbs in Australia that will not be affected negatively, whether there's a great macroeconomic environment or a microeconomic environment. So one of the examples you showed is a perfect average suburb that is doing well despite tough times. So if you rewind the clock 3 years or 4 years ago, 2019, you'll see sales data for the same quality of houses in that same suburb, clocking sales of about 1 million to 1.2. Just then what you shared to the whole audience is clocking sales of a range of 1.4 to 1.8 thereabouts, right? So what was sentiment in 2019? Let's look back at that. So sentiment back in 2019 was we had the Royal Commission come in 2018. Investors were fearful because it was just an assumption that banks were not going to lend to investors anymore because of APRA's different regulations and the Royal Commission, right? In reality, what did it mean? In reality, what it meant was people that should not be buying investment properties cannot buy investment properties.
Correct.
Is that a good thing for the health of our economy or a bad thing? It's a good thing.
Not putting people into financial stress
that they can't afford. So, do the basics first. People want to go out there and change the world, but they don't want to look in the mirror and fix their own bedroom to begin with, right?
I agree with you. Just coming back, and this is a quick example. This is something I was speaking to a client about. I don't know if this is the same property. This is a property in the Ponds. And I have no bias towards this suburb. It just was the first thing I could think of. This particular property, if you go back and look at property history, and I'll show you this, and I've gone back and done a deep dive.
Wow.
So this property was originally sold for $1.05 million in 2017 and sold for 1.532 million. Originally, this property was purchased off the planned land, unregistered land for $360,000. And then finally the property was built in 2014. So all up to the original owner, this property would have costed circa about 700 grand, 670 to 700.
Cost value minus not counting the interest after settlement of the land, which is fine.
Yeah. No,
Cost
just
value.
like purchasing like the land and the house. I'm not going into interest and stamp duty and all of that. So that's what they would have cost.
If you do want to get into interest and stamp duty, get in touch with us. We'll be able to help you out.
But then think of it this way. From 700, it's gone from 700 has become 1.53 million in about a 10-year period, roughly. Less than a 10-year period. That is doubled. And this particular suburb is 41 kilometers from Sydney. Doesn't have train stations, hospitals, the typical things. So this is evidence. And the reason I'm sharing this with the audience is just to back what Sean is saying here, that there is multitude of factors. Macro factors dictate how a market performs, but micro factors dictate how a particular suburb performs and how people perceive that suburb. And that's where Sean's coming from, saying, guys, I understand there'll be ups and downs and people go sideways, but there's certain pockets that hold value and consistently increase in value. And that's not bad, dude. Doubling your money in 10 years.
I mean, not even 10 years. You just got to look back 4 years, making 400,000 in a 4-year stretch. That's no easy stretch by any imagination. And if we're looking at the mistake people make, the mistake is relying on sentiment outside your control versus focusing on what's within your household budget and what you want to achieve. At the end of the day, what you got to figure out is property is a tool, and if used successfully, can be your best weapon to getting ahead to building financial freedom, right? We know that. So what are you going to rely on when it comes to sentiment is, are you taking the positives out of the negatives? Let's look at the overall negative, right? Are we in a good property market or a bad property market? What's the answer to that question? The answer to that question is, depends if you're buying or selling. So if you're buying and building a property portfolio, can you identify opportunities that
100%.
go against the grain of sentiment? Absolutely, you can. If you're selling today in a market which was getting record sales 6 months ago, but right now is failing to do the same, Is it the best time to be selling? Probably not. So this is where sentiment has its role that will always be played over time.
That's actually a really good point. That's going to be one of the things I cover. Yes.
Yeah. And so sentiment has its role, but what you have to figure out is, okay, don't let that affect what your internal clock is, what your family's goals are in terms of achieving financial freedom. That's the best way to look at it, but it is a mistake a lot of people
I completely agree. And the stuff you're talking about, we actually have a graph. So if anyone's interested, I can send you this report. It's just a quick overview on where the market sits. Now, if you look at this report and what Sean's talking about, let's talk about this for a second, because people talk about crashes and the world coming to an end. Do we have corrections? Yes. Okay. Since 1990, we have proper 5 periods where we corrected. Okay. But let's quantify that. When people ask me, is this the best time to buy real estate? The reality is 2000 to 2004 was the best time to buy real estate, because we had a 76.4% increase in the value of real estate. We've never seen that since. Was it a bad idea to buy after 2004 because there was no 70% increase? Not really, right? Now, again, I'm not saying historical data has relevance. This is history is going to repeat itself and I've got a crystal ball. All I'm saying is, again, Ray Dalio, respect. Everything has a pattern. And you're an idiot if you don't recognize patterns, okay? And if we look at the pattern since 1995 to 2022, and please, there have been interest rate rises. We've been through COVID, GFC, all sorts of stuff. Stuff you were talking about.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Banking, Royal Commission.
So look at this. 1995 to 2000, we had a correction of 1.7%, but the rise was 44%. Okay. In 2000 to 2004, the overall correction that we saw was 0.5%. The rise was 76.4%. Right? You come 2004, 2008, right? Negative 4.7%, but the rise was 30.9%.
Wow.
Okay. Now, GFC 2008 to 2011, worst time to buy real estate. 18% rise, 4.5% overall correction averaged, right? Combined capital cities, 2011 to 2000. Now, there would be markets that took a massive hit. And again, exactly what Sean said. I understand macro drivers can dictate market sentiment, but micro dictates how a particular suburb performs. Now, 2011, 2015, again, you guys can see 34.7% increase, 14.8, 8.7, and again, 2002 to we saw this about 33.6%, right? Very similar to 2004 to 2008 sort of performance, right? So this has happened before. It happened again. Again, not saying that it'll always happen, but you can see that when the upswing happens versus the downswing, there is a massive difference. And even when this whole thing started with interest rates and this and that, the reason we're not seeing it, guys, there's no supply. Builders going broke is a bad thing. It's people... right now, if you're not out there sourcing real estate and creating real estate, you basically can go... If you can go out there and buy toilet paper right now, let me put it a different way. Go and stock up on toilet paper because people are going to come running.
You mentioned something super interesting, right? You talked about builders going bankrupt. Right now, because of all the turmoil around new housing stock, technically speaking, this is the best time to be striking to supply new property in the marketplace. If you're an investor out there, the reason I say that is all these people that are generally afraid of doing it will result in a natural level of new stock being less in the marketplace for competition, which means that demand never drops off. People still want to get the benefits, the lifestyle, everything that comes with new stock without the risk. So who are those people? People that purchase new houses that are completed, people that rent new houses that are completed. But if they're not being supplied, what's going to happen in the new stock that is going to be supplied in the future? They will be top contenders in the marketplace. Dude. Funnily enough,
100%.
What are you waiting for? Go strike while the iron's hot. So we preach about this in theory. When it comes to practice, how many people really do it? That's what this test of Australia will prove for us in the next couple of years, I reckon.
And I honestly, as an investor myself, and I'm being really selfish here, I really hope a lot of people don't do it because I want to take advantage of it myself. I'm like, dude, you are in
you and your book of clients, of
correct.
Course,
that's what I mean.
You're going to look after those boys
correct.
For sure.
So 100% because in this market right now, if you have the ability to, right? And if you don't have the ability to look back at your financial decisions and why you don't have the ability to, that's a different question. Now, they're going to be some like keyboard warriors. People are doing it hard. I get it. I get it. But I'm talking about people who are homeowners right now. I'm talking about people who overstretch themselves to buy in a suburb that they don't even like. I'm talking about people who bought negative gearing properties because they thought it'll be beneficial in tax. It's not fun when you're really negatively geared because the tax comes at the end of the year. Now, again, we'll see a keyboard warrior going, what about a variation? You can get this accountant's letter. I get it. We know, right? But you're absolutely right. Now, Mark, coming to you, because we are talking about taking action. Dude, why are people stuck? Why is this a big mistake according to you?
I think a lot of people listen to what someone else has done. And when someone else has lost, let's say, they go by that and say, oh, I had a friend of mine who did something, hit them hard. I don't want to do it. And I think that is a very cowardly way of doing things in life, to be completely transparent. Now, the reason why I say that is because I'm a big believer of, in order to learn in life, you need to experience, right? Simply put.
I agree with
you guys,
that.
but I'm sure
you get a little, yeah. I think producer Ryan, that is a clip. TikTok that.
But look, again, whether you've been hit hard financially or you've suffered losses emotionally, physically, however it may be, I think in life you need to experience that, right? You need to experience it somehow. Now, in the world that we live in from a financial standpoint, everyone is afraid to lose what they're holding on to right now. And I think that's a valid point. Yes, especially when you have family, things like that, there is a lot more to lose.
But with inflation, you are slowly losing everything anyway.
All right, granted. But let's say I invest incorrectly, forget inflation. I've invested 100 grand, for example, and I've lost that 100 grand because my builder liquidated, as an example.
Correct.
That's an immediate hit. Whereas no one feels the inflation loss. They understand it, they talk about it, but they don't actually feel it.
True.
All right?
Till they're 60.
And that's the thing. No one actually, and the opposite end of the spectrum is that no one actually sees the glory of investing in real estate until you're 62 or whatever it might be. Yeah. So,
well, if you're lucky, 33,
Yeah,
or 34, 35 or 40. But you're right. Majority of people is 50s and 60s.
in a game where it requires time, whether it be a loss or a win, no one has the patience in today's market to wait out that long, right? So then they will go, okay, I'm going to make an executive decision based on someone else's decision, which I think, or their loss, let's say. And I've had plenty of arguments, over the years with either family members or just close friends around me, things like that. Oh, don't do this, do this. Nah, trust me on this. And it's like, well, let me experience my wins and my losses on my own. Don't let me listen to you and then you'll be the judge of what I do and never experience it, because that's, in my eyes, a load of...
So it applies to so many other things as well, though, right? Not just real estate. It applies to life experience. It's like,
correct.
It's like, don't have a beer. It's really not good. I've never tried it. But you might be, the hidden most loving beer drinker of all time.
Exactly.
That's a very good example.
And I think,
I second that example.
Execution is key to doing anything in life. Unfortunately, a lot of people hold back, and inner frustration does build up within them as well. And guess what? The only person that they end up being, upset with is themselves because they didn't strike earlier. So I think, yes, am I an action taker? Yes, I think I am. I've certainly experienced a lot in life, that's for sure. And that's purely because sometimes you do have to think less, do more, action it, and then whatever follows. Let it happen. Right? We see this data day in, day out. You can be anyone, and I'm going to talk real estate right now. You see data all the time, yet you still convince yourself it's not the right time to buy. Well, when is the right time to buy? If you know so well and you're not in the market, or you are in the market, when is the right time to buy?
When the bank is willing to lend you money, period.
And
Literally.
if they're willing to lend you 500 instead of 600, they're still willing to lend, which means you can complete something. But people are still afraid of that and say, oh, I'm looking to get a little bit higher. Well, by the time you get a little bit higher, the market's also crept up a little bit higher. And
I want people to know, and this is a crystal ball prediction, and I'm happy to be held accountable for this. 10 years from now, 10 years from today, so 2023, 2033, which isn't very far, a decade.
We will have just got back from Brisbane, the three of us.
We would have.
To Sydney, because,
Yes. I can tell you the opportunities that people have today. Of being able to access properties between that $500,000 to $600,000 mark or $700,000 mark is not going to exist. You will see the division between rich and poor. Right now, it is the office going and then the barista. There's a gap. there will be a massive gap even if you made $200,000 a year. It's not going. It is going to be the haves and the have-nots. And this has happened in the US. This has happened in India. This has happened in Japan, China. Name any country this has happened. This has happened because you are basically playing a game where you earn money and you lose money, either to the government, either in interest payments, government as in taxes, not just income tax. We pay tax when we buy food, fuel, cars, breathe, sit, walk, shoes, anything you pay tax. Do business, you pay tax, right? So for example, today, if your business turns over $1 million, you pay $300,000 to the government, you distribute wages, your employers are paying tax on that. God forbid you've got too many employees, there's payroll tax. Now, if you go buy something in the marketplace, you're paying GST, right? And then whatever you think you're putting aside, the only thing that most Australians have is their house. And that is the only, and yet they don't realize that this is the only thing that has consistently had value, right? Coming to this, Mark, and you made a very, very fair point. People making decisions based on other people's experiences and not really figuring it out. And it's in line with sentiment. You know, the media drives it. This is an example of the Northwest. I think 2153 is Castle Hill or Bella Vista. Yeah. So I'm taking you back to 2010, right? So we were talking about this. I want you to look at the median price for houses here. Okay, so from 2010, it was 500, 550, 600, right? So there were times where it went up and someone would have bought around this pot here, 643, and now the market's come down to about, say, 637. They go, oh my God, the market is correcting everything. I'm pretty sure if I actually sat and I had the time to, I could scroll and find news articles back to back every time there was a high or low, right? And you see this consistently going, and this is all people's sentiment. If people just chill, say, dude, I fundamentally know I've bought a good property. This is what I could afford. I'm okay. Look at how this property is rallied. So suddenly from $500,000, 2010, we'd rally all the way up, even in the worst time, is sitting at close to $1 million, right? Then rallies up to about 1.3. Then we see a little bit of a correction here. Goes up, goes down, goes up. But if you look at the whole journey, today's sitting at a median of 1.567, right?
You know what I just realized by looking at that? If you take away the scribbles in between and you just do it in 2-year gaps, you'll actually see a very clear dot by dot linear perfect growth.
Correct.
Over time.
Correct. You will.
You know?
You literally.
Naturally.
Dude, if you just bought in 2010, if someone went to Castle Hill or Borkham Hills or the Ponds, anywhere, Beaumont, anywhere. And I'm talking about dude, I'm not going to drop Toorak and Eastern Suburb examples because last time I did it on a webinar, people got really upset for some reason. So I'm going to give you very mum and dad suburbs. And people will be like, Castle Hill is not that cheap.
You can use Shorefields as well.
Yeah. But if some dude just bought a property or some lady just bought a property for $550,000, did not do anything, just made sure they could pay the mortgage, right? And when we help people buy property, we always tell them, dude, I don't care what the growth is, this and that. 80% of all owners' cost associated with holding this property should be paid by the tenant or the ATO, not you. Right? So we make sure we do that. There's exceptions to the rule. If you're someone who makes a substantial amount of money, it doesn't matter to you and you can hold it, fine. Right? But look at this, dude. Like, if you didn't do anything, and you know the best part? It's tax-free money. I can literally go, I bought a property, Mr. Bank, I bought a property for $500,000. It's worth $1.947 million. Thank you very much. I still owe $450,000. Can you lend me the rest? They'll go, yep. 80% of that, that's yours.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. And just to clarify, tax-free in the sense, not if you're selling, tax-free from the equity perspective, if you're using it to do other things.
Dude, even if you're selling, if it was an owner-occupier, that is tax-free.
True. As an owner-occupier, yes.
Please tell me how many people super in Australia is around $1.9 million in 20 years.
Hardly any percentage of people.
Right? Now some maths guy is going to go up here like and say, no, it was for 500,000, now it's 450, so 1 point. I get it, dude. Get the message. It is not that hard. And this will keep happening. This people don't realize the only purpose for this media to exist is to sell ads and subscriptions.
I have the perfect curveball for you both, right?
Yep.
Looking at today's episode, we've covered sentiment, right? Sentiment's always negative. And
It
we know
is.
that looking back at history, because we know that attracts eyeballs. But curveball question, if sentiment's always negative, why does the market keep going up? And what would happen if the sentiment was always positive? Would that reflect in a downturning market?
Look, I think the market keeps going up because there's a small bunch, and Australia is one of those markets where you don't need a lot of people. You need a few people to make the right decision that pushes it up. And whether people believe it or not, this is not a conspiracy theory. The government, I don't care whether it's Liberal, Labor, there is a serious problem in the way they release more real estate available to construct, to move into. They will do news articles. They'll turn universities into hostel. They'll do anything but release more real estate. And literally anything under the sun, right? And I remember 6 years ago, I said to someone, I said, dude, you have no idea. You'll start to see in this country, people sleep in caravan parks. It's happened in California. And they said, oh, it'll never happen in Australia. Everyone can afford to buy a house. What's happening now?
True.
I really wish I recorded that. I'm like, dude, people are going to live in caravan parks. Even if there's real estate readily available, they won't be able to afford the rent. And they'll be only the top 1% of a certain population. It's happened in New York, happened in LA, happened in Mumbai, happened in Delhi, Tokyo, Hong Kong. Name it. Name it.
It's just a matter of time.
Dude, and we are only 25 million people. Right? And the new prime minister was just talking about this. He said there's another million waiting to enter the country. So you got to understand this. These are not people who are coming here to come and do fruit picking. The visa fees is thousands of dollars. The tickets are thousands of dollars. They're prepared. They're bringing in $60,000 to $100,000 for the government because they're prepared to buffer themselves for a year. Whether it's through university, whether it's through business, it's happening, right? It is happening. So ladies and gentlemen, to wrap up this episode, I think, Sean, you had a really, really good point about sentiment. I reckon those are worthy of some LinkedIn clips.
Producer Ryan's got our back.
Yeah, and Mark, absolutely. I think the key takeaway is to think for yourself. Don't just believe someone's experience, right? And for me, to be patient. This is a long-term game. You want to get rich overnight, buy a scratchy. I don't know. Or marry well. I have no idea, right? But this is a long-term game. Guys, I really hope you got some value out of this episode. Don't give in to market sentiments. Find out for yourself. And I'm going to be shameless here. Ryan, I think in the comments, you got to put a virtual coffee for myself and Mark so we can talk to these people. Got something to say? Talk to us. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
I think we don't have time to wrap it. Robin, we'll wrap it up. Ladies and gentlemen, this Friday Night Live. Do we? Oh, great. Shawnee, Rapid Robbins.
Right. I wasn't prepared because I thought we'd be going a touch over time. But since we've got some time for a rapid round robins, let's go with an interesting one, right? All right. Yeah, just a really rough one to kick off. First time we've done this in a while. From where we are in 2023 at this current point in time, what capital city do you
I just censored that to create curiosity.
what capital city do you think? Censor your answers though.
Okay.
All right. Censor when it's answer time. What capital city do you think will be the strongest performance of capital growth from today moving forward over the next 12 months? Mark. Great. Capital city, I said, but okay.
That is a capital in that area.
I can't hear it now. And Kesh, you have to give your answer. We'll know your answer, but you got to censor it.
Ooh, this is going to be hard. I think in first place will be, and second place would be, and that's me.
Fantastic.
Sure.
My response is unnecessary because we've got 3 cracker responses here. We'll go with that.
I love this button. Ladies and gentlemen, Friday Night Live. My name is Sean. My name is Kesh. My name is Mark. I'm
Can
stopping
be
with
if you want it.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Have a good Friday.